The Inquisitorius served as the kidnappers of the Empire, and while some came across as clumsy and incompetent, others were threatening to our heroes even with their limited screen time. So by taking a PL or power level for each character, let's group these warriors into the categories of weak to strong, like even the mysterious Inquisitor seen facing off against Ahsoka in the new show. But before I start, who do you think will be the Inquisitor with a 10 out of 10 score?
So predictable.
Starting with level 1, the only guy I have for this one is the 8th brother, who makes me very sad to put this low because in my opinion, he has probably the sickest design out of any of these guys with that helmet and stuff. But unfortunately in action, he gives off the energy of a complete buffoon that has no training whatsoever. I mean, bro flies in here like a helicopter and then gets defeated by 3 makeshift Jedi, gets defeated by a droid, and then tries to fly away with his spinny lightsaber and sells on that too. So all around a complete L. He was actually the same species as the Trellian Jango Jumper from the Clone Wars called Cassie Cryer, and his custom Inquisitor lightsaber hilt had a buzzsaw-like weapon that could be employed when the blades were turned off. So again, a guy that looks very cool but cannot really keep his own in battle. And as we move into the power level of 2, just know that I'm kind of winging this system, but more or less 1 means that they really are trash, they suck, and then as you move up, 5 is like really mid, not all that great, 10 is the best of the best, and kind of go from there. However, the only Inquisitor from this section is the Tales of the Jedi Inquisitor, who, surprise surprise, I'm not going to put that high due to how long he lasted against Ahsoka. Look, I get she's a skilled fighter and all, but Jedi are the Inquisitor's job, so you'd think at least some of them would be competent at killing them, but alas, that is not the case. He was one of an unknown humanoid species and was close to 6 feet tall with a unique mask. After arriving at the village where Ahsoka had been reported, this Inquisitor burned it down and killed everyone after she was nowhere to be found. Later, Ahsoka would return and turn off the Inquisitor's own lightsaber before using it to cut off his head in one swift motion. And Vader probably walked by his deflated head later and used it to polish his helmet. I mean, after all, that would be more efficient than the Inquisitors normally. I also think this guy looks pretty cool, but yeah, he really didn't have much of a purpose, which kind of feels like an homage to the Darth Maul death in Rebels, but I'm not really sure. For the rating of 3, all I have is the 4th sister from the Kenobi series, who is also of an unknown species and literally does nothing the whole show but walk around and look angry sometimes. Maybe if she saw more action, I could put her higher, but for now, this is the best I can do. And we actually do see what her mask looks like in the comics when Lina Graff impersonates her. But yeah, I just remember not really thinking anything of her in the show because she literally doesn't do anything. So this is one that will probably be expanded upon in the future just because Disney Star Wars is moving towards using the Inquisitorius so much in all of their projects, as we've already seen. But for now, there really isn't much to work with here, so I had to put her lower. Moving into number 4, you have to understand that this isn't one universal power rating for all of Star Wars, it's all relative to the Inquisitors. So don't think if I say Inquisitor number 66 is a 10, that means they're beating Yoda anytime soon. With that out of the way, however, at level 4, I have Reva, or the 3rd sister, who at least did some stuff with her lightsaber, which puts her above the 4th sister at the very least. The only problem with Reva is she just never tends to do anything well. She tries to kill the Grand Inquisitor, but he comes back to life. She tries to fight Vader, but is embarrassingly dealt with, and she tries to kill Luke, but is stopped by moisture farmers. She still obviously has some skills here and there, like parkouring over those rooftops on that one city planet. With a power level of 5, we have the 10th brother, who used to be a Jedi called Proseth Dibs, and actually tried to kill Mace Windu, leading to him being sentenced to rehabilitation after his Jedi trials. He did this because of how the Clone Wars was dismissing the Jedi doctrine, leading to him assaulting Windu in lightsaber combat. This later turned Inquisitor had no eyes as he was Miru Lakin, and also had long white hair which complemented his Imperial armor. The 10th brother was shot down by his own Purge troopers after a mind trick from the Padawan Farron Bar. So he was most likely pretty strong as a former Jedi, but also perished due to the same purge troopers that the 6th brother and 9th sister managed to escape from, since he was surprised in the moment. Although I do suppose that is somewhat of an honest mistake, as Ki-Adi-Mundi died kind of the same way, but I'm sure he was a lot more powerful than this guy. For the power level of 6 out of 10, I have a couple different Inquisitors. One is the 5th brother, who is one of the most prominently shown guys in many comics, as well as Rebels and Obi-Wan Kenobi, but he also had some pretty cool facts about him. The 5th brother was of an Atremisium species and had grayish green skin, and also used an unrelenting aggressive lightsaber form that was made up of overhead slashes and heavy strikes to behead or bisect an enemy. He died on Malachor in 3 BBY at the blade of Maul, who knocked his saber to the ground, and this on top of the relative incompetence towards capturing and or killing.
Wait, go back. Did you say Andor?
But yeah, he was pretty bad at that, and also died quite easily to Maul without putting up much of a fight. Also, the 6th brother I have at, funny enough, the 6th power level, who not only had a cool armor design, but also died in a fight with Ahsoka where she made his hilt unstable, which exploded in his face. I put him higher than the guy from Tales of the Jedi, however, because even though in this fight Ahsoka had no lightsabers, meaning the 6th brother had a slight advantage, at least he had a fight in the first place. I'm looking at you, Tales of the Jedi. Since we have 4 different people for level 7, I'll just go through these rapid fire. The 7th sister had about the same luck as the 5th brother when it comes to finding Ezra and them, but seemed to at least be better at capturing him, which is why she's higher. She also died to Maul in Rebels. Next up is the 9th sister from Jedi Fallen Order games, and she was pretty tough, as we can see, and can provide a good fight from her size and strength, but she also, spoilers for Jedi Survivor, failed twice to kill a Padawan and then younger inexperienced Jedi, and as a consequence hit the sack herself. Twice, I might add. And yeah, that actually did really catch me by surprise in Jedi Survivor, because I really thought she was dead, but you know how Star Wars is half the time.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Also, we have a couple of Inquisitors, literally, as in a love type of couple, known as Talon Yaluna, and also Iskat Akaris, or the 13th sister, and the one managed to knock down Darth Vader, while the other captured Eth Koth's baby, so that's pretty significant compared to most of the other failures that are the Inquisitorius. But yeah, these are both some, I guess it still is canon, I was about to say legends, because all the Inquisitors are canon, since they're so new and in the Disney era for the most part. But these two were just in the comics, and they were still pretty powerful. I believe the Akaris 13th sister, I believe she had her book as well, but there's that. For our last few ratings, I only have one for each, and I mean, what did you expect for the Inquisitorius? Did you really think there was going to be a bunch of high ones? Yeah, that's not the case. But starting with 8, I put the 2nd sister, originally known as Trilla Sunduri, that is the main antagonist of Jedi Fallen Order, and actually proves to be a huge threat to Cal, managing to beat him basically every time they meet in the game, and would have admittedly required lots of skill and power to impress Vader enough to appoint her to the 2nd sister. I'm not exactly sure if that's how it works. I kind of assume the higher up the number, the more powerful they are, but as we see with Reva, that might not entirely be the case. She died after her 3rd duel with Cal, being defeated barely, and then made up with her master Seer, but Darth Vader came in from behind and executed the Jedi Hunter swiftly with the stroke of a blade. At power level 9, I have the Inquisitor seen in the new Ahsoka trailer, who's been given the name of Marok, and in the trailer clearly fights against Ahsoka at 2 different locations, once at a spot with some sort of droid, and the other in a cold forest on some planet. This means that unlike the 2 Inquisitors mentioned before, with a PL of 1 and a PL of 6, this guy not only managed to successfully face off against Ahsoka with a genuine duel, not once, but twice. Also, since he is alive 5 years after Endor, that means that this guy has been around for a while and survived through a lot, perhaps even the last Inquisitor alive, as our boys at the Stupendous Wave have pointed out. There are some speculations that boil down to Theory 1, He's the 8th brother back from revenge due to his similar helmet design, but this can't be true when we take a look at his hands and feet, which are clearly human. Theory 2, he's related to one of Imbo's dogs known as Marok, and yeah, I'll let you decide on that one. I don't think this Inquisitor is just a dog in a suit, but we'll see. And then Theory 3, we're finally getting Starkiller brought back into the story since Galen Merrick matches up with his name, and also Dave really enjoys that character, as don't we all. But the moment you've all been waiting for with our top spot, our top Inquisitor, we have the Grand Inquisitor, who probably gets his feel of signature superiority from actor Jason Isaacs, who did a great job, but also this really is the only one that ever feels like a true threat to the characters, getting very close many times to dealing with Kanan and Ezra, which makes sense as Grand Inquisitor, but he also just has a way of feeling like the real deal and not some joke, which probably is contributed from the way he uses his lightsaber like a single blade instead of a always wannabe Darth Maul helicopter type buddy that just sucks. So yeah, Grand Inquisitor is obviously going to take the top spot here, and there was also a bunch of characters from Star Wars Visions that I could have included here, like the one from the Latin studio, but I just didn't think I would have had time in this video. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to. I upload every Friday and sometimes on Sunday too at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I also post shorts on Saturday, but yeah, see you. Obi-Wan is probably the only example of bringing a knife to a gunfight actually being successful, and this is because as much as Mace Windu claims they are keepers of the peace, there tends to be a surprising amount of limbs missing wherever the Jedi go. So let's shove as many of these characters as possible into a rating system to see the most skilled in lightsaber and Force combat, including Ahsoka, who will be put a spot higher in honor of the new show.
That's why I'm here.
Also, I won't be including the nameless characters like Jedi Bob, unfortunately, but we all know he'd be a 10 anyway. Starting out with the best of the best, we have Coleman Trebor. Okay, I might have spoken too soon about him being the best because level 1 is actually the worst, but then it gets better as we go up. But Coleman was the only Verk Jedi of the era that was 7 feet tall, preferred peaceful solutions, and was based off of the Parasaurolophus fossils behind the scenes. In Attack of the Clones, he tries to take out Dooku, but little does he know that only Jedi with plot armor are actually allowed to take on the main Sith, so instead he gets murdered immediately. And this guy has become somewhat of a meme. At least he did try to take out Dooku, whereas a lot of the other Jedi would probably be too scared to even try in the first place. Next up at level 2, we have Nadar Veb, and in case you forgot, this is Kit Fisto's arrogant former apprentice from the Clone Wars that was so blinded by pride and anger he tried to take on Grievous alone and ended up being shot through the torso. So he's not even that terrible of a fighter, at least not bad enough to be at 2, it's just that he completely disregards the teachings of the Jedi, leaving him easy to defeat. And this is kind of sad because Kit Fisto is my favorite Jedi, so I would assume this probably isn't his teaching. I believe they actually got split up before he could finish his trials due to the Clone Wars, and that's probably why he was so arrogant here. As we move into 3, you'll have to understand that like with the Inquisitors video, these PLs or power levels are not generally applying to all of Star Wars characters, it's only relative to these characters. So like even though I gave the Grand Inquisitor a 10 on the last one, he probably would have been like a 5 here, but with that said, at 3, I've got Shaak Ti and Jocasta Nu for different reasons, and my big problem with Shaak Ti is that for one, we never really see her accomplish anything significant in battle, but also she dies like 5 different times throughout Revenge of the Sith. As for Jocasta, she might have been powerful once, but now she's just an old librarian that occasionally can use her lightsaber and is killed by Vader in a really good comic book. And I'm sorry to say that being sassy and a know-it-all to the slightly less sassy know-it-all isn't going to give you more points on the bracket. Also, I never liked the library that much anyway, so yeah, bye. With 4, we have some other characters as well, like Yaddle and Adi Gallia, so these guys did get much more significant roles after the prequels where they serve as background characters, which definitely helps me out here to decide where they go. Some facts about them are that Yaddle was born in 509 BBY, making them almost half a millennium old, and also they could use Moritro, aka the Touch of Death, which was a way to basically make someone's body stop working. It was a special force power. Adi Gallia, on the other hand, was a skilled starfighter pilot and had fought and survived General Grievous 2 times during the Clone Wars. Also, she was on the council like Yaddle, which is pretty significant. And Yaddle is at 4 because she managed to fight off a undetermined Dooku briefly, but was also crushed by a door.
How embarrassing. How embarrassing.
Also, Adi Gallia was killed in a fight with Savage Opress, where he headbutted her to death and then stabbed down with his red lightsaber too. Now, next up for Rey, I honestly get tired of the whole bandwagon opinion of putting her at 1, so that's why instead I'm going to put her at -1. No, just kidding, but I don't think the DBBH team, has enough time to add more areas to the rating system, but if I was to give her 1, I'd say 4, because she holds relatively well against the sequel villains, which is just Kylo Ren admittedly, since they only have 1 villain, but that is still pretty impressive, and Kylo is like a baby Sith, you have to remember, so then with that faint respect that we just had is suddenly gone again, and her beating Palpatine feels like more of a plot armor moment than anything, as she doesn't really have a clever way of defeating him, like throwing him into a reactor. She just kind of overpowers him because she's the main character. Our first pick for the power level of 5, where the characters are getting a little better, is Aegon Kohler, who was an Iridonian Zabrak Jedi that I put here because he's quickly killed by Palpatine, who arguably chose him first since he's the weakest link. However, he obviously didn't see this move coming, which means you can't get too mad at him for it, and also we see Aegon being pretty skilled at Geonosis against the battle droids, especially if he survived. And also at 5, I have some of the younger Jedi of the Imperial era, like Ezra and Cal Kestis, who are both pretty tough admittedly for being trained without the Order, but still, neither could get close to holding up to Vader on the different occasions that they fought him. Some of them I will base off of how good they are at fighting Vader, as that seems to be a pretty good system here, but they were still pretty powerful. So you'll notice I'm spending more time on the prequel era Jedi and less on the ones outside of it, and one reason for that is I just generally prefer talking about the Republic era Jedi, but I also feel like it's sometimes hard to compare some of these Jedi that are admittedly weak in comparison, but if they were given proper training would maybe be great. For the PL of 6 though, I have Depa Billapa, who was Mace Windu's Padawan, and Caleb Doom, or Kanan Jarrus's master, that perished on Kalar to her clone battalion led by Commander Grey, who mercilessly gunned her down. Also at this PL, I have Evan Peel, who was featured in the Citadel arc and proved to be very wise and creative in battle, but was sadly killed by an Anuba on Lolo Sayu after it bit and tossed the small Lonic Jedi around. Also in 6 is Yarael Poof, who was a wise Jedi serving on the council during Anakin's discovery and died while saving Coruscant from the Infant of Shaw artifact in 27 BBY. And I must admit that it does feel pretty weird when I'm working on a random video and then one of the Jedis that I've made long videos about before just randomly comes up when I just randomly know everything about these guys now, like Yarael Poof. Also at level 6 is the Master and Apprentice Luminara Unduli and Barriss Offee, who both seem highly capable and skilled enough, while certainly not as flexible as the pair of Anakin and Ahsoka. Another victim of Order 66 to mention is Stas Ali, another Thalothian Jedi, like her cousin Ali Gallia, who isn't shown in the Clone Wars as much, but is most likely more competent overall if she survived longer up until her death on her bark speeder, shot down by Commander Neo. And the last person for the level of 6 is Kanan Jarrus, who is one of my favorite Jedi, but the problem is that even though he seems pretty tough in the Imperial era, it turns out if we put him up against like General Grievous or Count Dooku, he really wouldn't last long at all, considering the fact that he couldn't even defeat Darth Vader with Ezra. So yeah, but Kanan is still pretty powerful, and I definitely thought he deserved to be a rank above Ezra. And you already know, it's that time in the video where I get way too many characters in one section and then go rapid fire through each one of them as to who sucks and who doesn't. Because with the Jedi, I might have bit off more than I could chew because there is just so many of them to mention here, but try not to shove a bunch of random lore in your face. Okay, so for level 7, we have Quinlan Voss, first of all, that went on many reconnaissance missions behind the enemy lines and stuff. He was in the Phantom Menace in the background. He was pretty good at spying, but he did fail to kill Count Dooku, which I guess is an L, but he's definitely one of the more tough ones. Also, he trained Aayla Secura, which is kind of surprising to me because to me he seems like he'd be the same age as her, but he's actually, like, I guess a lot older, so he has some respect to his name. Also, we have Oppo Rancisis, who was a Thespian Jedi with a really cool anatomy that basically made him extremely proficient in combat, and he could do things that no other Jedi could do due to his very cool anatomy, like I just said. And he was very skilled in lightsaber combat and was also one of the best Jedi in the entire council for Force meditation. So I'd honestly love to put this guy at like level 8 or so, but we just don't know enough about him to really put him that high. Also, we have Aayla Secura, who we do see a good bit in the movies and shows and stuff, but she's just a good lightsaber combat, pretty wise, and knows what they're doing in battle and stuff, but also doesn't just go out and kill a bunch of people and stuff either. Also, we have Eth Koth, who was a Jedi that actually went up against General Grievous at the Battle of Seleucami, and Imagundi, who died at the Battle of Ryloth after giving a very good last stand, I must say, and Kruk, who was a Wifid Jedi in Legends that was also in the 2003 Clone Wars show, and they actually thought he was dead there, but apparently he survived and then came back a lot later, which means that he is very powerful and durable and can survive a lot of stuff, and he just looks really cool in Legends. I mean, bro has a really good workout routine, I must say, so I gotta give him some points for that. And lastly, in 7, we have Luke Skywalker, who is a Imperial era Jedi. And if we were talking Legends Luke Skywalker, because I know a lot of people will be very angry right now, yes, I know Legends Luke is like 9, probably a 10, but I'm just looking at him from Return of the Jedi, where he is able to beat Vader and is pretty powerful, but also doesn't stand a chance against the Emperor, whereas some of the other Jedi here could at least put up a fight. Moving into the level of 8, we have Qui-Gon Jinn. Even though he's a little bit older, he can do great in a lightsaber fight. Yes, he will get tired, admittedly, after fighting against a Sith Lord, but Obi-Wan is just as good as Qui-Gon, if not better. He honestly proves himself to be better in that fight when he's young, but even when he's older, he can go up against General Grievous and Darth Vader very well. And Kenobi is basically just like the prime example of what a Jedi should be in every way, shape, and form. Next up, Ahsoka Tano, who I would definitely put at 7, would never consider putting her at an 8, but I would bump her up here just for her show. She gets extra points for that, I guess. Ahsoka's pretty powerful. She went up against Grievous, and yeah, she served under Anakin Skywalker, which gave her a lot of great skills and teachings that she probably kept with her for a long time, so she was also very powerful. Also, Pong Krell is here because he was able to hold his own against multiple different squads of clones on Umbara, and while you might not like him, he is definitely a very powerful Jedi. Ki-Adi-Mundi, Plo Koon, and Kit Fisto, who you have to believe how much I hate to just say those guys' names so quickly, because like especially Plo Koon and Kit Fisto, my 2 favorite Jedi, so if anything I'd spend half the video just talking about them, but to for the better of the audience, those guys were just some of the best on the entire council, with Ki-Adi-Mundi being very old and wise, Plo Koon being a great patient Jedi that really cared about the clones, and then Kit Fisto was just insanely good in a lightsaber fight and held his own against Grievous for longer than pretty much any other Jedi, even Obi-Wan. And I think when it comes to background Jedi characters, I would say those 3 are in fact the best. Going to level 9, we have Anakin Skywalker and Mace Windu. So Anakin Skywalker was the chosen one, and if we were talking about Vader when he's still not burnt up and stuff, I'd give him a 10, I'd give him a 20. I mean, he's the chosen one, he's the most powerful character in Star Wars. The only reason Obi-Wan defeated him is because he had trained him and knew how to defeat him. But yeah, the only reason I put Anakin as a 9 here is because we're talking about Jedi. So this is at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith, where he is insanely powerful, but not a 10. And Mace Windu, I mean, you saw him in the 2003 Clone Wars, you've seen him beat Sidious with the Vape-Pad lightsaber style and using the dark side and everything. But that leaves us with level 10, the best of the best. Sorry the end of the video is getting kind of rushed here, but I just gotta include all these people. We have Yoda. Yoda is insane. I think a lot of people actually don't really give Yoda credit where credit's due because they'll kind of put Yoda and Mace Windu on the exact same level, and I definitely think Mace Windu is very close to Yoda. They're like the two most powerful. But the thing is, I do think Yoda is a good bit higher because even in his old age, he still is better with a lightsaber and probably more skilled with the Force too. Definitely more skilled with the Force, I'd say. He just doesn't get to use it as much as Mace since he's not in the front lines. Just try and imagine Prime Yoda. I mean, that would just be insane. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to. I upload every Friday and sometimes on Sunday too at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, I post shorts on Saturday, but before I finish the video, I just want to say thank you for a great summer. I know it's not quite over yet, but I do have school starting up soon, so videos will be going to about 1 a week instead of 2 a week, but I actually pre-made a couple videos this summer that will be coming out in about a month or less, so it shouldn't be too bad. You'll just notice less videos here, and yeah, big thanks for all the views and stuff. Really do appreciate it, but yeah, see ya. Clone troopers were developed to dive straight into battle without question, and a good way to determine which was the deadliest is through who did or didn't make it to retirement. And yet today, I'll place these brothers in a ranking based off of who could wield a blaster and even just keep their head down, ranging from the Special Ops Corps to some of the fan favorites like Wolf and Cody. But while some would want me to skip over the unnamed clones, I'll be including some of them too for comedy's sake. Our first pick for a power level of 1 is an unnamed clone trooper from the Battle of Christophsis that loses his blaster and then attempts to punch a B1 before gripping his injured hand and then being shot down. Overall, at least this guy is brave, but also proves that sometimes your fists can't solve everything.
Incorrect.
Also, we have this guy from the Citadel arc that was seen climbing up the building while rescuing Evan Peel, and until he is chopped in half by one of the many security doors on all sides that are closing. So at the end of the day, maybe this guy should have just believed instead of giving up and being lazy. Next up at 2, and here's the scale again for reference, we have Trauma, who was an ARF trooper slash clone commander that also served under the Jedi called Halsey, as well as the other Jedi Nox at the Temple of Edith on Deveron, and had a stylized green and red armor. When the Dark Warrior Sauvage Opress came barreling in, Trauma would run up to him before, with no delay, the Zabrak flings the unlucky soul into oblivion. So overall, I don't feel like he put too much thought into this strategy here, and also, I'm not too sure about that name either. Okay, at 3, and yes, I'm aware that we're moving through these first levels pretty quickly, but as it turns out, most of the notable clones are actually pretty competent, but our only person for 3 is Commander Fox, who was a part of the Coruscant Guard, stationed of course at the capital of the Republic, who was extremely loyal to Palpatine and also a highly decorated soldier. Some reasons I have him here are because he was fooled by some modified demolition droids in 21 BBY who would cause a power shortage and blackouts in Coruscant, even though that was like his only job to guard that. And also, he was always the first guy to want Ahsoka dead after the Jedi Temple bombing, and was also the one to kill Fives, which is an L, to be honest. So while coming up with the clones to use for this video, I was trying to remember why everyone hated on Fox so much, but then I remembered Fives, who of course everyone is gonna simp over big time. And just a quick segue here, as I'll mention later in the video, we actually do have a join button now if you want to become a member of the channel. I would greatly appreciate that, but obviously it is optional. Moving up to a PL of 4, we have Commander Neo. Now this is of course an example of someone I'd rather put much higher, but since we're technically basing this off of power, and also we haven't seen too much of Neo, I guess I don't feel too bad, all things considered. However, Commander Neo was an ARC trooper and leader of the 91st Mobile Reconnaissance Corps with his red and white armor, being littered with emblems of this corps. The reason I have him this low, despite how cool he seems at face value, is that while most of the other clone commanders walked up to their Jedi to kill them, Neo just kind of sat back in his speeder and, being a little sneaky boy, moved his bark speeder behind Stas Alley's, killing her. So note to clones, if you want to be higher on this list, stop being lazy.
No.
At level 5 is Commander Colt, who was also an ARC commander who fought at the Battle of Camino and also helped train future ARCs there, and while he did hold his own against Grievous for a brief time, this was soon forgotten as Ventress immediately destroyed him in battle, force choking him, then stabbing him, and lastly giving the clone a kiss. This was so brutal that at one point Cartoon Network actually removed this part from the episode before it was later put back in. Also, we have Captain Vaughn, part of the 332nd, who like Colt did something notable when driving some Mandalorians off of a bridge, but this was overshadowed by his death in the tunnels of the city, where he allowed himself to be split off from his commander and other troopers. Although props to Vaughn and the 332nd for using my channel colors for their Legion. Blue and orange, baby. For the PL of 6, we're now really getting to the good characters with, first off, Gree, who is very cool with his green and later camo green armor and all, and is clearly experienced enough to serve under Luminara as well as Yoda, but I'd have to take some points off for how he lost in a fist fight to a Senate trooper. But also, he couldn't even beat a Jedi who had their back turned to them. And what's that, you say? The aforementioned Jedi just so happens to be Yoda? I mean, like that changes anything, right? Also at 6 is Cut La Quain, who remember is the deserter clone that had his own family, and while we really don't see him in much combat other than against some commando droids, I'm giving him a higher rating because he retired early, so that means he's extra good, right? Lastly, for a PL or power level of 6, I've got Mayday from the Bad Batch Season 2, who probably was a little more docile in his youth, but here is actually pretty slow and dies from the cold and an avalanche, where Crosshair manages to survive both of them while being more or less fine, other than nearly freezing to death. So not saying he's bad or anything, but we really don't see much of his fighting capabilities, and he doesn't particularly have a warrior's death, if you know what I mean. At 7 though, we have some more brothers to inspect, like Commander Bly, one of the leaders of the 327th along Jedi Ayla Secura, who had yellow armor with a comma, pauldron, and macro binoculars, which he was known for. And also he had a strong sense of duty and was wary of Quinlan Vos when having to work with him. He seems to be pretty effective throughout his battles in comics and also in the Clone Wars, but to me he just doesn't have enough notable achievements to put him higher. Although I will say he did perform Order 66 with ease. And next up is Commander Pons, who serves under Mace Windu at battles like Ryloth and Malastare, even going against the Zillo Beast. All around, he seems very competent and provides as an excellent combat partner to Mace during their overtaking of the Ryloth droid forces, even being trapped on a narrow side of a mountain. Also at 7 is Jet, who was at the second battle of Geonosis and helped with the flaming of multiple Geonosians, which is a very based war crime if I do say so myself. And also he managed to quickly recover from when his gunship, among many other, crashed into the sand, immediately thinking about the battle at hand. Closing in on the best, at level 8 is Commander Bakara, leader of the Galactic Marines, who had aggressive tactics in battle and was known to lead in front of his troops into battle, ignoring the Republic protocol and standard practices, making him obviously very brave. Also, the real reason I've got him here is because he managed to take down not only a Jedi, but one of the top Jedi during Order 66, with his squad sustaining only minor injuries. So basically he's an elite clone with some elite achievements. The other one for 8 is Heavy, who I couldn't put on the same level as Fives and Echo due to him dying so early on, but even with that said, It's hard to deny the fact that Heavy has drive and a fighting spirit and attitude that makes him extremely impressive in battle for a shiny. Also, he is the first of many I'll be talking about soon that goes out with a hero's death, surviving for a long time against many droids. At a power level of 9, however, I have many candidates, and to start with the most notable, Captain Rex served alongside Anakin Skywalker, one of the most feared Jedi generals of the Clone Wars, from basically start to finish. He was not only an effective leader, but he also got to know each and every one of his men, and was even more loyal to the Jedi he fought with, like Ahsoka, who helped him overcome his inhibitor chip. Also, Rex was unique from his blonde hair and Phase 2 armor, which welded together pieces from his Phase 1 helmet, notably the visor, and also someone just as iconic is Commander Cody, who was the Rex to Obi-Wan and led the 212th, another extremely important legion, across battles like Ryloth, Umbara, and Utapau. He came equipped with an iconic visor, and overall he is just as competent as Rex across his appearances in the Clone Wars, and continues to be just great at what he does. Also, of course, Fives and Echo are both going up here at 9, with them proving themselves as deadly ARC troopers later on that were just as experienced as Rex. Now, admittedly, some might put Fives higher as he lasted longer and was less impulsive, but I'm a sucker for Echo, so I think I'll keep him right here. Next up is Gregor, who actually got amnesia after the Battle of Sarish until he was found by D Squadron, who allowed him to sacrifice himself against tons of battle droids, where he proved what it means to be a Republic commando. But forget not that he also survived this and went on to help with the rebels into his old age. Lastly, for this PL, that being 9, is Captain Keeley, who in my opinion has one of the best hero's deaths among the bunch, as he made his last stand with Imagundi at Ryloth, proving himself as an admiral warrior that believed in his cause. But with him out of the way, that means it's time for the best of the best, the 10 out of 10s. And first off, I'd have to throw Boss and Sev from Delta Squadron in here, because even though Gregor is great, he ain't one of the Delta boys, that's for sure. Also, Captain Fordo I'd have to put here, as in the 2003 Clone Wars series, he successfully takes out a city worth of battle droids at the Battle of Munilist, before later at Coruscant 1v1ing multiple B2 battle droids, even punching one with his rifle. Also, I'd have to put Wolf, who may or may not be my favorite clone, but that's besides the point, as he proves himself again and again to be worthy of Plo Koon's forces, like at Kadavo, where he liberated Togruto slaves. Also, Commander Thorn is pretty overpowered as well, and is the last of the last stands to mention for today, who fights against waves upon waves of battle droids at Scipio with his Z6 rotary blaster cannon, and also takes 5 shots to the chest before actually dying. But the best clone of them all is Denal, who, wait, why is he on here again? Oh yeah, that's right, because the Blue Bounty Hunter, me, killed him and took his armor, making me technically the top of the list. And that's because you already know I'm a 10 out of 10. And God is better than me anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe if you want to. And by the way, we actually have a join button now if you want to become a member. There are different levels, so if you don't want to pay like $24 at first, that's fine. You can just start out with $2, but just know that that option is there now. I upload every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I also post shorts on Saturday. But yeah, see ya. Sith Lords were generally supposed to be 3 times the power of a Jedi, so how come this keeps happening? I don't know, it's a good question. But today, I'll be rating the power levels of each of these warriors from least to most dismemberments at their hands, answering age-old questions like who's tougher, Maul or Dooku, and also if you maybe don't know as much about the Legend Sith, I'll be giving you a brief outline of each, and turns out they all have very unique Force abilities.
No, my wife is gone, and I'm stuck in a machine for the rest of my life.
A farm boy is destroying my super weapon.
Want to eat a planet?
Yes.
My only entry for a power level of 1 is a legend Sith whose name was Darth Malavel and was of the Quarren species, looking like a Darth Maul variant of them, as is the case with most of these guys. Turns out red and black is a pretty common color among the Sith. Who could have guessed? Darth Malavel served under Darth Krayt's Sith rule past 137 ABY. He was given control of the 407th Stormtrooper Division. However, it would seem this sad excuse of a Sith failed the test, so to speak, as he would end up being shot and killed by his own troopers behind his back when he tried to execute a defecting one. Overall, he seemed to be a pretty good general and warrior, but still takes the 1 on this for pulling an Order 66 era Jedi level of stupidity, getting shot from behind like that. Moving up the ranks barely is Snoke. Now yes, I know that technically Snoke is just a deformed clone / creation of Palpatine, and yes, I also realize that a lot of you hate the Disney characters and will probably refuse to watch this video now, but I'm going to throw a few of them in here for fun anyway. Don't worry, most are pretty low on the list, but Snoke has the long list of achievements starting with number 1, sitting in a chair. Okay, yes, he admittedly had Force Lightning and telekinesis and all that too, but he definitely doesn't compare to Vader at all, as he has no insight towards the future whatsoever, which is why he probably has earned the right to be at the exact opposite side of the spectrum as him, because as cool as his death scene was, that's pretty embarrassing on his part, not gonna lie. For the next PL, we've got another sequels character who really isn't a real character at all, that being Sith Rey. Now I had to put her higher because she actually doesn't seem like too weak, to be honest, but she has a decent lightsaber, and if going off what normal Rey does earlier in the movie, she has powerful Force Lightning too, but we just don't see enough of them to really judge. At a PL of 4 is Darth Momin, who, while from 1,000 years before the Sith we know, is actually a canon character, and I put him here because he was a Sith scholar and sculptor, which, you know, if this was a smartest characters ranking, then maybe he'd be a little bit higher, but considering as that is not the case, it is notable though that he had built multiple super weapons and also would later haunt his mask after his body was disintegrated, leading to an interaction between him and Vader, which I covered in a different video. For the power level of 5 is Naga Sadow. He was from 5000 BBY and helped greatly with the hyperspace wars, expanding the Sith Empire to unimaginable lengths. The reason I put him here, however, is while Naga was considered a valid candidate for Dark Lord of the Sith, his strengths came more from philosophy and strategy than combat skills, and also he had to take refuge on Yavin 4 back then for decades, and then voluntarily placed himself in suspended animation before being awoken in 600 years. So he got kicked out of his own empire and also made some questionable decisions, but ultimately was a legendary Sith alchemist as one of the most powerful magicians of his time. And about him being from Yavin 4, I don't know how good I feel about like all of the main movie planets also being connected to something from the distant past, but I guess with Yavin 4 it does kind of work due to all the unexplained temples in A New Hope, and also with the Old Republic era, I trust them a little bit more with stuff like this. Also with a PL of 5 is Kylo Ren, who I used to think of as pretty tough. I mean, Adam Driver did a good job of making him intimidating from the get-go, but when we take into account that he had got beaten by Rey, who had
Never held a lightsaber.
it starts to get obvious that Kylo is pretty mid in the power scale. Now, he can still use the Force to interrogate people, which is pretty good, and also is one of the more impressive members of the trilogy he's in when it comes to fight scenes, at least. Okay, it's time for the real Sith we came here for, and at a power level of 6 is Asajj Ventress, who was a Night Sister taken from her home and trained as a Jedi Padawan before her master died, and she was then taken as Darth Tyrannus' apprentice and trained under him as an assassin. Now, like a couple other people on the list, Asajj could definitely be disqualified as a Sith per se, but I'm going to keep her and a couple others to make the video more fun. In the Clone Wars, Ventress Ventress is always a notable threat to Anakin and Obi-Wan, and yet notice, unlike Grievous, she never manages to kill any Jedi, and also her Force abilities are pretty laughable compared to more experienced users like Yoda. First up for our PLs of 7 is Savage Opress, who I'd love to put much higher, as he's one of my favorite Star Wars characters, but I think I'm pretty much legally obliged to put him a level below Maul, at least, or else I'll be jumped. But the biggest thing with Savage, the biggest thing with him though is that while he was never fully trained and lacked skill and most importantly form, he also had raw, immense power that far outranked many of the most famous Sith due to its Night Sister enhancement, and he was able to force push Dooku and Ventress into a wall at the same time, breaking both of their Force shields, had multiple scuffles with different Jedi and Sith, leading to only a missing arm, and I feel like when the only reason that you died is because of the Senate of all people, I feel like that's saying something. Also, we have one more Legend Sith to talk about here at level 7, and that is Darth Talon, who was a female Twi'lek with red skin and black tattoos, and she decapitated her fellow Twi'lek Sith master, Darth Ruin, and later rose up the ranks to a full Sith in the One Sith Order, and actually became one of his 2 hands. Basically, that means that she was like a direct follower of all of his commands. She would also seduce and recruit Cade Skywalker into becoming an apprentice of the One Sith, and she was skilled with Force Lightning, concealment through the Force, and also dueling, as she fought 2 notable Jedi at once with ease. With the honor of a PL of 8 is first up Darth Maul, and mind you, when I do these, I never actually rank the characters within the individual power levels, but I tend to assume they're all about the same level. Now this brings up the question, who's more powerful, Darth Maul or Darth Tyrannus? Well, the common answer I always see on the internet is Count Dooku, but I have personally always thought of Maul as being more threatening, skilled, and powerful, so I'm going to subvert expectations and say they both get a PL of 8, and you can decide who is better. For now, Darth Maul though is definitely worthy of this spot, as in his prime he was very physically strong and agile, a very good combination, and also his dueling with a double-bladed lightsaber was deadly too. In The Phantom Menace he killed Qui-Gon Jinn, and then also got this close to ending Obi-Wan's life as well, if not for the whole will of the Force thing. And unlike Dooku, he actually was so wrathful that he managed to survive his defeat and grew in his wrath for Obi-Wan, making him a significant threat years after his prime, even when he was cut down by half. Darth Tyrannus, on the other hand, was known as the best duelist in the galaxy, mainly due to his success rate, being able to disarm Anakin and Obi-Wan with ease, and also his form to Makashi lightsaber style, which was both elegant and terrifying. Dooku also gets bonus points for his Force Lightning and Force Choke. So it turns out when writing this video, like every single Sith has a PL of 8, so here's all the rest of the ones for this level. Darth Plagueis, his master Darth Tenebrae, Darth Traya, Darth Sion, Darth Malak, Darth Malgus, Darth Krayt, and also Starkiller. You all obviously know Darth Plagueis for being the master of Sidious, and he was of course very powerful and knowledgeable. I mean, think about it. All of Palpatine's skills had to come from somewhere, and he's the guy. He was very skilled in altering the Force and using midi-chlorians, which actually led to the existence of Anakin, who, as you remember, had no father. Darth Tenebrae, who was the master of Plagueis, and was actually a part of Darth Bane's rule of 2 Sith lineage, which he actually violated by having a second apprentice, Darth Venomai, I don't know how it's pronounced, but Darth Venomice. Also, Tenebrae was a powerful wielder of the Force, speed, and red Force Lightning. The reason I wanted to talk about Tenebrae more is because I didn't know much about him, and also I feel like a Bith Sith looks pretty cool. Darth Traya was the leader of the Sith triumvirate between her, Darth Sion, and Darth Nihilus. While Darth Traya on one hand was a powerful user of unconventional lightsaber forms like Chakata, where she would turn off the emitter and then turn it back on to move through defenses, surprising your opponent, and also a form of telekinetic fighting where 3 lightsabers would levitate around her. Sion on the other hand was basically a walking corpse and actually used the Force to hold his decomposing body fight together, making him surely one of the more scary and unique Sith Lords of the Old Republic. Darth Malak used to be a fellow Jedi along Revan, who was then turned over and was actually extremely powerful as well, but in my opinion a rank below Revan. Darth Malgus was featured prominently in the Old Republic games and also cinematics for said games. Darth Krayt was the leader of the one Sith I mentioned earlier, so he gets a PL of 8 for how long he was able to survive up to the Battle of Coruscant. That being the Battle of Coruscant after the George Lucas movies. And lastly, Starkiller is of course well known for being one of the wildest characters of Legends, in part due to the excellent work of Sam Witwer, but also from what I've heard of him being more powerful than Vader, which based on that Star Destroyer clip I've seen before doesn't surprise me. At a PL of 9, which I'm going to go through quickly because I want to sleep tonight if possible, is first up Darth Revan, who was a human that started out as a Jedi, briefly wore a Mandalorian mask, and then became a Sith. So I guess when Revan is doing those identification papers, he can basically like check off all the boxes. But yeah, him and his friend Malak went to the unknown regions, which is where they discovered the Sith Emperor, who turned them both to the dark side. And I'm pretty sure Revan became a Jedi back again or something, but if you want, I can make a separate video on him, because trust me, his lore is already quite extensive. Lastly, for the 10 out of 10s, we have both Sith Emperors Sidious and Vitiate, and I'm actually going to have to go on a limb and say that Sidious was probably more powerful, considering he's known by many as the most powerful Sith of any era, modern or Old Republic, but Vitiate did also have some notable achievements, such as, living 1,000 plus years, and taking at least 4 different times to truly die. Also, I'll throw Darth Bane, who started the Rule of 2, and Darth Nihilus, who casually could consume plants with the Force, as you saw in the intro. Yeah, he basically drained them of all life energy, and also he survived only by being a wound to the Force, or basically a spirit with only a mask being around to show his physical existence. And lastly is Darth Jar Jar with a power level of 30. Now, I didn't forget a very important Sith known as Darth Vader, because I may or may not be working on an hour-long video going over his deepest, darkest lore. But anyway, that's it for this video. You can subscribe, you should do that. There's also a join button, which is completely optional, but would truly help me out and the channel if you want to do that. We stream almost every Saturday now, so don't miss those. Don't think I'm going to be having one this Saturday because I want to figure some stuff out with the channel, but these types of videos come out every Friday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I also post shorts on Saturday, but yeah, see ya. Who is the most powerful character in Star Wars? Is it Palpatine? Is it Yoda? Is it Nightfall Vader? Is it Dexter Jetster? Okay, maybe not that last one, but today I'll be analyzing the power levels of every major Star Wars character based on what George Lucas himself has stated, while also looking at whether characters were more powerful in the Clone Wars or Imperial era. Starting off with Darth Vader, I actually gave him a 9 out of 10, and while Nightfall Vader, which is what has been labeled to Vader before he is cut up on Mustafar, is by some considered to be the most powerful Star Wars character of all time, even more powerful than Yoda and Sidious, but going with the suited Vader we see during most of his run, I have to go with 9 out of 10 because despite his Force powers possibly being a 10, the way his suit impairs him from dueling and physical strength keeps him at a 9. However, it is important to note that Anakin/Vader had the highest midichlorian count of anyone in Star Wars, which makes sense considering he was the chosen one. Obi-Wan Kenobi has a power level of 8, and as much as it hurts me to give Obi-Wan such a high score, considering I always thought he was significantly weaker than the top dog Jedi like Kit Fisto and Plo Koon, he also has a way too impressive track record and powerful post-Order 66 Force level to ignore. Not only did he defeat Darth Maul, a very powerful Sith, and also defeat General Grievous, a very powerful warrior, but also he grew to enough power as Ben Kenobi to transcend into the Force after his death. Yoda is next up, who has a power level of 10, and next up Yoda was not only the Grand Master of the Jedi Order, but also was the most skilled duelist of the Temple, being able to best Dooku in combat on Geonosis, who was also considered a GOAT of dueling, and Yoda's extreme physical strength and small form granted him a very powerful acrobatic lightsaber form. He also used rare Force abilities like Tuta Minus, and became a Force Ghost after death as well. Next up is Luke Skywalker, who has a power level of 10, and while Luke in the original trilogy never came close to having a 10 out of 10 power level, I mean in A New Hope he was probably a 5 out of 10, in Empire he was about a 6 out of 10, and in Return of the Jedi he was an 8 out of 10 at best. But later in the Legends timeline, Luke as the son of Anakin Skywalker was immensely powerful and is considered by many fans to have actually surpassed Anakin himself in his power, which is a pretty crazy thing. Next up is Han Solo, who has a power level of 4, and here's our first non-Force sensitive figure, Han Solo, who for a human smuggler was very skilled at a gunfight and definitely knew a thing or two about combat. However, he's no Jedi or Sith, and he isn't even really on the same level as a bounty hunter, which puts him here. I'd actually say Han is about the same level as your average clone trooper. And speaking of clone troopers, next is Captain Rex, who has a power level of 5. And Rex showed countless times that not only was he an expert strategist and leader in battle, but he was also not afraid to demonstrate his combat prowess on the front lines, which was showed during events like the Battle of Umbara. Also, by the time of Revenge of the Sith, Rex had fought through the full 3 years of the war, making him much more knowledgeable than most clone superiors. Also from the Clone Wars era, Ahsoka Tano has a power level of 7, and she definitely took a long time to get to this point, but then again, we don't see every Jedi character when they were a Padawan. Even people like Plo Koon were like her at some point. The fact that without completing her training, she was able to take on enemies like Darth Vader years after Order 66 is proof enough that she had a higher power level than many Jedi. Next up is Darth Maul with a power level of 8. Darth Maul, whilst not being as powerful as Count Dooku or Darth Vader, certainly wasn't some weak character by any means, and he was able to take on 2 different Jedi at the same time and nearly destroy them both, if not for his arrogance towards the end of the fight. Palpatine has a power level of 10. Palpatine, however, is considered the most powerful Sith to ever live, and we can see why this is so from his use of powerful dark side abilities like Force Scream and Force Lightning, as well as how he was able to defeat Yoda and bring about the downfall of the entire Jedi Order, something that the Sith had been plotting to have done for centuries upon centuries. Next up is Boba Fett with a power level of 6, and Boba Fett was one of the more skilled bounty hunters to ever live, easily the most powerful of the Imperial era, and learned a great deal from his father Jango Fett, who he arguably was not as powerful as. If we were looking at other bounty hunters on this list, I definitely give people like Cad Bane, Bossk, and Aurra Sing a 6 out of 10, whereas characters like Dengar, IG-88, and Imbo would most likely be a 5. Qui-Gon Jinn comes in at a 7 out of 10, and Qui-Gon was never known for his combat skills or physical power in the Force, but despite this fact, I still think people underestimate Qui-Gon, considering he was able to survive to nearly the very end of the duel between him and his apprentice versus a Sith Lord of a higher power level than himself. He was only defeated once he was isolated from his Padawan, and considering this was during an era where the Sith didn't focus their teachings on the Sith, who at this point had been extinct for quite some time, I'd say his performance was quite impressive. Now, to look at whether characters were more powerful in the originals or the prequels, we first off have Vader, who certainly lost power from how his suit impaired his physical movements, although I'd put suited Vader over Anakin as a Jedi any day of the week. Luke, on the other hand, was definitely more powerful as a growing Jedi Knight than as a newborn infant. Yoda definitely became weaker due to his incredibly old age, as by the time of The Empire Strikes Back, Yoda was very close to death. However, Palpatine and Obi-Wan both got more powerful from their growing knowledge and connection to the light and dark sides of the Force. But real quick, here's the Christian advice segment of the video. You can skip to this time if you want to get back to the main video. And for today, I don't actually have a segment from the Bible. However, I do actually have a bit of life advice that I thought I would share with y'all, because obviously coming from a 16-year-old, you really want to know this stuff, right? Now, anyway, life advice is, I mean, you know, some of y'all are probably my age too, so this might be helpful. My advice this time is going to, if you need to work on something and you're like procrastinating or doing anything like that, just tell yourself, I'm gonna work for 20 minutes and then see what happens from there, because I bet you after 20 minutes, you're gonna realize, oh, that wasn't that bad, and I actually feel good having started to work on this. So that's just a pretty good rule that I've been following lately, where if I'm ever procrastinating or anything like that, just work for like the first 20 minutes and it'll be a lot easier to, you know, get the momentum going, rather than like thinking, oh, I have 5 hours of work ahead of me. You can just do 20 minutes and then it's a lot easier. Album of the week is going to Damn by Kendrick Lamar. Also, you can leave a comment on this video if you have any video suggestions, any questions about this video, or just want to tell me how your week has been. Also, check out the merch store for the winter merch, as there are some very cool things on there, and I think maybe it'd surprise you if you just look at the website real quick. You might find something that'd be a good gift for a friend. Also, I upload normal videos every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, shorts every single day. But yeah, back to the video. Next up is Mace Windu with a power level of 10. While not as powerful as Yoda, Mace Windu was still unbelievably skilled with the Force and an amazing lightsaber duelist as well. His most notable achievement was defeating the Dark Lord of the Sith with his self-engineered lightsaber form of the Pod, which allowed him to fuel from the dark side energy of an opposing Sith. If only Qui-Gon had used this.
You're so freaking stupid. It's crazy.
Next is General Grievous with a power level of 7. So, turns out Grievous wasn't Force sensitive, so that's a pretty glaring issue right there. However, he was still a Jedi killer that defeated countless knights across the Clone War and was greatly skilled in lightsaber combat, plus his robotic frame enhanced his physical strength and agility to terrifying levels. Next up is Count Dooku, who was a 9 out of 10. Dooku was already one of the most skilled duelists of the galaxy, even before he turned to the dark side, and his ability to use Force Lightning and telekinesis fluently on top of his impenetrable Force shield led to Dooku being a very powerful Sith who was able to best Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker on multiple different occasions. Next up is Revan, who had a 10 out of 10 power level, according to me. Revan was a Jedi who was very influential in the wars against the Mandalorians from the Jedi, and he would go on to become a Sith Lord who was imprisoned by the Sith Emperor for centuries before finally helping to defeat him alongside the Jedi, but his soul was split into two halves of light and dark until he was finally able to transcend into the Force. Our last character is Rey, who has a 7 out of 10 power level, and Rey shouldn't have achieved as much skill as she had by the time of her fight with Kylo Ren on Starkiller Base, except for the fact that she was Palpatine's grandchild, which meant she had enhanced potential, and by the Battle of Exegol could take on Palpatine and beat a fairly skilled Darksider in combat, that being Kylo Ren, on the wreckage of the second Death Star. And if you enjoyed this video, you might actually want to see the power levels of every Sith from Star Wars, so if you click this video right here, you can watch just that. But yeah, see ya.